Time. Okay. Guitar Rick just lost his guitar. So now he's just Rick. Okay. We're in a very loose put series here. Loosely put, I mean, we are kind of speaking in the last month, even in Sunday school class, we've been talking about gratitude, one of the more unsung issues that I think we really need to capitalize on. And today, whereas we are going to be talking about being at peace, there's a large part of that has to do with gratitude, and of course, with November being Thanksgiving, we want to kind of push that attitude of gratitude, and it is a vital issue in life. And the Sunday school series that I was teaching, and we're just wrapping that up here. But the Sunday school series I was teaching was about the power of gratitude, and it indeed is something that you really need to tap into. And when we look at the word peace, then we've entitled the message this morning, At Peace. All right, when you really look at the word peace, we kind of use it simultaneously with the word happiness. When you ask people, what do you want in life? Many people just say, well, I just want to be happy. That's kind of my goal in life is to be happy. I was talking to Brother Elliot too just a minute ago, and what we oftentimes think that a person will be is like, for instance, women. All right. Especially you wives out there, you probably will never be happier than your saddest child, because you take that thing on you, all right? And but Brother Elliot and I were kind of laughing because, no, I can be happy. I don't care how miserable my kids are, But the mothers aren't that way, and so they'll never be happier than their saddest child. And so you kind of put in the mindset that happiness is the goal, but really happiness is not the goal. We think it is, but honestly, peace is what we are really seeking, is peace. You cannot be happy but be at peace. But you can't, it doesn't work the other way around necessarily. When if you're not at peace, you can't be happy. So we really need to think about what our ultimate goal, achievement in life ought to be is to be at peace, and then happiness follows. So we're going to be talking about that, and I'll have you turn to Philippians if you're following along in your tablet or phone or book or however, or you can be lazy like most of us and just read the screen. All right. So, but we're going to be in Philippians chapter number 4. But before we begin reading here, okay, I need to give you the backdrop. Everybody loves the backdrop, and this is kind of unusual. All right. When Paul wrote a letter, and we understand 2/3 of the New Testament was written by a man named Paul, the Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul was obviously a genius. He was obviously, very smart. He was the man for the man of the hour. He was the right man for the right job. The Apostle Paul was really quite something. In fact, The Apostle Paul never even met Jesus until after he had resurrected, and it was a supernatural occurrence. He was knocked off his camel on the way to Damascus. He was persecuting the church, and many of you know the story of Paul, and the Lord appeared unto him, and he got saved. So he went from persecuting the church to being the major character of the first century church. And he wrote 2/3 of the Bible. But I'd say 95% of Paul's writings and what he did, because he was such an intelligent man, and he was a Pharisee, trained as a Pharisee, had sat at the feet of some of the smartest scholars of that day, and he was really a learned man, and he took it upon himself to write letters to these assemblies. Okay, at that time it was called the Way. Not even, they first started calling it the church in Antioch, and that kind of took on, but up to that point, it was called the Way. And Paul would write letters to these churches, the Way people, and he would help them out. 95% of Paul's letters was to straighten out doctrinal problems. Okay? 95%. Here's what would happen, right? That obviously Jesus Christ was of Jewish heritage, and he shows up on the scene, born of a Jew, and he was a Jew, and yet the plan of God, the mystery that was hidden in God for thousands of years was that the Messiah would come through the Jewish line, and the Messiah was here for the entire world. For whosoever, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. But the Jewish people, when they heard world, they only heard Jew, the Hebrew. That was their problem. They had such a prejudice against anybody who was a Gentile. And so the problem now is Paul goes around, and as his manner was, he would go into a city and he would go to the local synagogue. Now, throughout the world, every major city had a synagogue. Jewish colonies, because of the dispersion, and they were dispersed, and when they were allowed to go back to their homeland, many people just stayed dispersed. They had created a life for themselves. They were, they had jobs. They were, familiar with the community. So there was large Jewish colonies throughout the entire world. Paul wanted to tell them about Jesus Christ. He knows that every Sabbath, all these people get together, and they're prime candidates to get saved, because Jesus was a Jew, and he came and he saved, but he's saving the entire world. So you're a Jewish colony in the middle of a Greek city, and the Greeks aren't bad, the Gentiles aren't bad. Get that out of your head. Jesus died for all of us, to the Jew first, to the Greeks also. So this is how Paul started churches. He oftentimes went to the synagogue, and he'd get a following. He'd get a bunch of people believe. Sometimes the entire synagogue would get saved. Now, he had a problem, that the Jewish people would come in behind him and say, yeah, everything Paul taught you, that's good and all, and you get saved by Jesus Christ. Yeah, you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, but you got to keep the law. That was the big problem. Legalizers came in and said, yep, fine, get saved, but Paul's not right on this one part. You still got to, essentially, you got to become Jewish. You got to be a proselyte into Jews, and then you get saved. And Paul's over and over and over, he dealt with this issue, and he wrote many of his letters straightening out doctrine, straightening out this legalism that would creep in after he left town. So he starts the church. He's got them on the straight and narrow. They believe, they understand. They even are going after Gentiles to get saved. And Jews come in and say, that's all great, but you still got to keep the law. But here's the thing. If you're truly saved, you don't have to keep the law. It just comes natural. You don't keep the law to be saved. You're already saved, and you just do right because it's right. And you don't have to go through the Pharisees' 680-some extra laws, oral laws. But you don't have to try and keep Moses' law, especially if you're a Gentile. That means nothing to you. You just got to trust Christ. And the law of Christ is this, that you love one another as I have loved you. That's it. That's all you do. You don't forget the sacrifices, forget all that. You just trust in Jesus. All that stuff pointed to Jesus. All right. So as soon as Paul left, then problems came in, and he would write these letters to straighten out all these doctrinal problems. I say 95% of what Paul wrote was straightening out doctrinal problems. But today, we're looking at one of the few times Paul is not trying to straighten out a doctrinal problem. The church at Philippi was doing a pretty good job. They were pretty doctrinally sound. Legalism hadn't set in yet, and what little opposition or legalistic people were showing up, they had kind of put them down and put them in the back, and never paid attention. And they kind of got Paul's message that if you love God and love people, that's what it's all about. Tell people that Jesus Christ came and died for their sins. That's it. And they had it down. So Paul is sitting in one of Nero's prisons, and this is not a good place to be for a Christian. And he's in prison, and it's one of the prison epistles. But it's very, very upbeat. Hey, Philippians. Hey, you've kind of got it right. You're doing good. And since you are sound in your doctrine, I just am writing you to encourage you. So this is where we pick this up. I'm writing you to encourage you on just the inner workings of a Christian. We don't have to worry about outer opposition and about keeping doctrine right. I'm going to encourage you. And if you can imagine a man, sitting in Nero's prison who's trying to encourage people who are free, okay? What a tremendous character that is, all right? So he's just saying, okay, this is kind of the inner workings of what it's like to be a Christian. That's your backdrop. All of Christianity almost all seems like, there's such conflict, and there's so many people trying to, get the church and get it off track and get it off course. But wait a minute, there is a church out there, the Church of Philippi, and these people are doing pretty good, but don't get caught up in just trying, it's all duty, or here's what it's like to practice Christianity on a personal level. So he starts out with this. And by the way, if you carry a Schofield Bible, they got study notes, all right? And every so often, and usually you'll find divisions there wherever, and you have a Bible that's usually in verse form, all right? It was actually written in paragraph form. And so oftentimes Schofield will give a heading to every paragraph. So if you see a heading, okay, in your scriptures, it's apart from scripture. It's just kind of added there by the editor. And if you see that heading, it usually indicates that there's a change in paragraphs. And if you got a new paragraph, it's kind of, you're on the same topic, but you got a new thought. Okay, so basically the heading to this in the Schofield Bible, it says the secret to peace. Again, doctrinally y'all are sound, and you're doing good, but I'm trying to encourage you on what it's like to live the Christian life personally. All right? And he says this: let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. And be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Let's stop and think about this and keep in mind the backdrop that Paul is just trying to say, all right, this is what it's like to live Christianity out personally. And he's saying that in this context, all right, that this is the secret to the peace of God. Moderation. Let your moderation has to do with an avoidance of an extreme position. And you get it, right? You see it on the news all the time. People who take extreme positions, there's always a conflict. I mean, that's the nature of an extreme position. Whether you're an extreme right-wingist, that's hard for me to say. Whether you're extreme right wing or you're extreme left wing, the problem there, the key word is extreme. And there's going to be conflicts. Maybe you're extreme at something, and maybe you're extreme at some sport or anything. Those are the ones that usually go bad. People get hurt is because you did something to the extreme. So when there's this command, Paul's saying this is what it's like to be a Christian, right? It says, "Let your moderation be known to all men." So don't, if you find yourself on the extreme end of anything, that ought to be a red flag that something is going to be, and let me just, forgo this, something is going to be a peace stealer, something that will steal your peace if you're extreme at it. So, he says, let your moderation be known unto all men, the Lord's at hand. So you've got this life. You only got one life. It's a short life. You would say, yeah, well, we got 70 to 80 years and whatever. Yeah, but it's still, in light of eternity, this is kind of short, and the Lord is at hand. Paul personally believed that he'd probably see the Lord's second coming. He didn't get the big picture. He didn't understand that, no, the longer the Lord waits, the more people that will take advantage of salvation, So, but he personally believed that the Lord was at hand, and at any time the Lord could come back. And you can't waste your life being on the deep end of something, going off the deep end of being extreme. Moderation be known unto all men. Be careful for nothing. The terminology here is somewhat archaic, all right? Be careful. He's saying, don't be anxious about anything. Don't worry about things. So be careful for nothing. So there needs to be this avoidance of taking an extreme position on anything. This is how you live the modern Christian life. Be moderate. And be careful. Don't worry. Don't be anxious. And this is the epidemic of the day. We think it's COVID, but the epidemic of our day is people that are worried and depressed and anxious all the time. Be careful for nothing. But, you see the conjunction? But in everything, prayer and supplication. What's he saying? He's saying that you replace, if something is causing you angst, if something is making you worry, replace it with prayer. And if you really believe that God hears you and God cares, then prayer will help you not worry about it. Yes, it's looming. Yes, there's no conclusion yet. Yes, there's still a problem there. But I know it's in God's hands. I casted all my cares upon Him. It is in God's hands. I can't do anything. He will cause all things to work together for good. So what is that thing that you are worried about, that thing that causes you to be anxious? That thing, replace it with prayer. This is how Paul's saying, this is how you operate as a Christian. is that you don't take an extreme position on anything, and don't worry. If you are worried, then you replace worry with prayer and supplication. He kind of uses two, and there's technical differences there, but prayer is when you're asking for, a need, a problem, and supplication is when you're, kind of asking even for others. All right. So, but everything, if you're worried about your kids, pray about it for them. If you're worried about your personal issues, maybe it's a health issue, then pray about it. So you replace that thing that's causing your angst, that's causing your worry, the anxiety, all right, and you replace it with prayer. And here's the attitude of prayer. Much is said about, the attitude of prayer, being in an attitude of prayer. And if you look that up, you talk about going down a rabbit hole. You just Google, an attitude of prayer. What is an attitude of prayer? And one guy says, well, there's 7 attitudes of prayer, and he goes, down this list. And one guy says it's 5, and another, and they just go on and on and on. There's like 142 verses concerning the attitude of prayer, and their definition of an attitude of prayer, being in an attitude of prayer is, way out there, and so you really think about, okay, I shouldn't take an extreme position on anything. I need to be moderate. Okay, I need to. If I'm extreme at something, they're probably going to rob my peace. All right, then I can't worry about anything. All right, it's going to rob my peace. If I do worry about something, then I am going to replace the worry with prayer. But here's the attitude of prayer. With thanksgiving. When you pray, your attitude of prayer needs to be gratitude. Many times we go into prayer and it's just all about me and what I want, but if you will go into prayer just grateful that you have the opportunity to pray, grateful that you're alive enough to pray, grateful that you can think straight enough to pray. I mean, that's a place to start, but that's the attitude, that's the true biblical attitude of prayer, is gratitude. So he's saying, all right, here's on a personal level, Christian, this is how you operate in life. Be moderate. Avoid extreme positions on anything and everything. And don't worry. And if you are going to worry, replace worry with prayer. And if you're going to once you replace worry with prayer, then be grateful when you go into prayer. I thought of a half a dozen different illustrations of just dealing with kids. And when kids are asking for something, if they come to you and they want that new, Power Ranger thing or new Star Wars thing or new, all right? And they have an attitude of entitlement, I'm sorry. I mean, you lost me at entitlement. You know what I mean? I don't have to give you anything, And then I get real smart aleck and I'm like, I brought you into this world and I can take you out, and all those kind of, things that, discourage kids. So, but the fact is when your kid comes to you thinking, I've got it coming, you need to give me, and but God's the same way. When you go to him with like, okay, I'm supposed to ask for my daily provision, my daily bread, right? You got, Lord, give me my, But if you come with an attitude of prayer, that's a game changer. An attitude of gratitude in prayer is what I should say. All right, when you come that way, just with your kids, when your kids come to you, and you can tell they just love it so much, and they're so grateful, and then yes, you want to continue to foster that relationship and give them the things they need. God's the same way. So You got this. You got this encouragement from Paul. It's not doctrinal, but this is how you live life. It's moderation. It's not worrying. If you've got to worry, replace worry with prayer and be grateful. Just that attitude of gratitude. Let your requests be made known unto God. Look at verse number 7. He says this, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding. There's the kind of the goal of life. It ain't happiness. It's peace. The peace, that absence of conflict in the heart. That absence of covetousness that robs us of our peace. That peace that is just that comes from God. We oftentimes think of or talk of peace, and even the world talks of peace, but we're actually comparing apples to oranges when you really think of what peace is. Because peace is an absence of conflict, but it actually goes deeper than that when it's godly peace. Jesus, he mentions this in John. He says this, peace I leave with you, my peace. The indicator here is this is a different peace than the world's peace. My peace I give you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your hearts be troubled. See, the world's peace is this. There's just this absence of conflict, which is the technical definition, right? The absence of conflict in the heart. The absence of conflict in a person's life. The absence of conflict in a nation. We call that peace. The world's at peace. But Jesus is saying, wait a minute. There's more to my peace than just absence of conflict. And that's what Jesus is promising us. So back up that screen to verse 7 of Philippians. All right, and the peace of God, and this passes all understanding. Because the world thinks it's just absence of conflict. But Jesus is saying, no, there's more to it than that. Because we have a peace that keeps your heart. It doesn't just, have no conflict. It actually keeps your heart and your minds, your feelings and your thoughts. They're in the hand of God. Verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure. You know the verse. Whatsoever things are lovely, are good report, there be any virtue, any praise, think on these things. Here's where we're at. All right? We have this command that what you're looking for is moderation. What you're looking for is not worrying and replacing worry with prayer. What you're looking for is a grateful attitude. And when you get all that, here's kind of a maintenance program to this peace of God. It's to have this positive thinking. And I hate kind of going there with that terminology. How many of you have ever heard of Norman Vincent Peale? Anybody ever heard of that? Okay, half of you know Norman Vincent Peale. Norman Vincent Peale wrote a book back in the 70s called The Power of Positive Thinking, and it's ruined the term positive thinking for me ever since. He took this concept of thinking right, thinking pure, and he took it a step too far, and actually like there was supernatural power in just being positive. Well, that doesn't work. All right? Somebody once said this, Norman Vincent Peale, that on the power of positive thinking, his concept that there's actually supernatural power in just thinking positive, It's just, I find the apostate Peale appalling, but the Apostle Paul appealing. All right? And thank you. I'm here all week, right? All right, so So I hesitate using that term, positive thinking, but it's what Paul's talking about. This is your maintenance program for peace. So you practice moderation, you practice prayer instead of worry, you practice gratitude, and then you think positively. Thinking negatively will rob your peace. How do you think positively? What if you got something really horrible coming up? Then think of a positive outcome. Best possible outcome. Think on these things. And you'll be able to handle whatever comes your way because you've got those promises too. You cast all your cares upon him because he careth for you. And all things work together for good. Why? Because he loves you, to them who are called according to his purpose. So, finally, brother, whatsoever things are true, honest, pure, just, lovely, good report, there be any virtue, any praise, think on these things. That is your maintenance program. That is how you keep peace in your life. And then you get proactive. Look what he says in 9. He says this, those things which you've both learned and received and heard and seen in me. Do. You see how I've treated people. You see how I've treated people that didn't like what I was preaching. If you just see the way I handled it and the way I dealt with it, and I dealt with it in love, that'll bolster your peace. So the God of peace shall be with you. You have that maintenance program of positive thinking in your life, and you just are a doer. Throughout my adult life, I oftentimes would be in business and have employees, and the ones who enjoyed the work, and they weren't complainers. If there was a problem, they would try to fix the problem. They'd try to make it happen. They would, you know what I'm saying? But the complainers, those are the people that struggled with whatever the job might have been. Complaining. Those people that would stand around and complain about the job never did anything. But if you can be a doer, you really don't have time to complain. And you figure out ways to get it done. Honestly, folks, if you're sitting there and say, you know what, I'm kind of a complainer, then I doubt that you really understand the peace of God that passes understanding. And you need a long, hard look in the mirror, friend, because if you're that complainer, you say, well, maybe I am. If I'm being honest, I ask your best friend. And if they are your best friend, they'll be honest with you. And ask them, do I complain a lot? And they'll probably say, oh, yeah. That's probably what because it's hard to be at peace when you're a complainer. Be a doer or a complainer. Then verse 11. He says, not that I speak in respect of want, for I've learned in whatsoever state I am, wherewith to be content. All right. He mentions in verse 10, we skipped over that for sake of time, but he mentions in verse 10 that, you guys have, you've helped me out. You sent an offering to me. You were very kind and sent me some money. Thank you much. And he says, not that I speak in respect of want. You just sent me the offering, the kindness of your heart, because I was not like, oh, I got to have money. I was not. So Paul's saying, not that I speak in respect of want. That was the backdrop to verse 10, because everybody loves the backdrop. All right. For I have learned whatsoever state I'm in, therewith to be content. Contentment. That's peace. Contentment has made poor men very, very rich. And lack of contentment has made rich men poor. If you can be content, now you're at peace. Now you're happy because you are content. Paul goes on and describes it. I know both how to be abased. I know what tight times are, and I know how to abound. I know I've had no money. I've had plenty of money. And I know how to be full and how to be hungry, both how to abound and how to suffer need. But he says, I've learned. Key thought. Contentment is a learned process. Now here's your takeaway, and we'll wrap up with this, all right? Your takeaway is moderation. Then prayer, as opposed to worry. Then there's gratitude. Once you master that, moderation, prayer as opposed to worry, and gratitude, is positive thinking. Meditate on the good things. Next, it's proactive doing. It's just getting out there and doing things and not being the complainer. And then contentment. Just, I'm okay with it. I'm okay that my life is not perfect because I know that God is, and I've casted all those cares about. This is what Paul's saying. This is how you live a life of Christianity. You're not meant to be worrisome. You're not meant to be in conflict. You're not meant to be without peace. You're meant to have a peace that passes understanding. You need to be at peace. And the most practical advice he gives us in this handful of verses, be moderate. Don't take an extreme position on anything. If it's extreme, there's a problem. And it'll steal your peace. It'll rob your peace. Replace your worry with prayer. Replace those things that perhaps do worry you and be grateful. And meditate on positive things. Not on the possibility of how bad things could be. And be a doer. And learn to be content. I went through a phase as a young man. I was a journeyman carpenter, and I went through a phase there where every 2 years, and it was a struggle to make it 2 years. Every 2 years, I had to have a new truck. And at some point, I just thought, what it costs causes me, stress. I mean, that payment. In those days, your truck payment might be $150. I'm dating myself, but then all of a sudden now I think there's $600, $800 for a vehicle payment. Do you realize how worrisome that could be? I learned contentment. I have to have a new truck. You know what I do now when I get the anxiousness of getting a new vehicle? I wash the one I got. It's like it's brand new. Who'd have thought? I bought new tires. The fact is I've learned to just be content. Right now, my truck is a 2007. What is that? Going on 13, 14 years old. And I love it. It could use a good wash right now, but I love it. Why? It's paid off. Christianity is meant to give you a peace that passes understanding. And here is the best advice Paul ever gave. Moderation. Moderation. Back up the screen there. Moderation. prayer as opposed to worry, gratitude, positive thinking, doing, and contentment. And when you do those things, verse 13, I can do all things. I can do all things. We quote this a lot. We put this, on bumper stickers. We put it on signs and hang it in our house. But he's talking about when you can master this peace that passes understanding thing, you can do all things through Christ. Because you got that peace. Father, I pray you to help us now to examine our lives, to be honest with ourselves, to be honest with each other, and Lord, to truly seek out what worries us and replace that with prayer. What am I extreme on? And Lord, find a more moderate position, Lord. Help us now to be grateful people. Help us to meditate on positive things. Help us to be doers. And help us to be content with the things we got. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Stand, please, if you would. Heads are bowed and eyes are closed. You're here. You say, you know what, preacher? I don't experience the peace that passes understanding like I would like to. And God spoke to my heart. Would you slip that hand up real quick? Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you. All over. Thank you. I would like to. Who wants to join me? Maybe you're here and you don't have that ultimate peace of knowing Jesus Christ as your Savior. With your heart and your head bowed before God, you can just say, Lord Jesus, come into my life, save me from my sins, and take control of my life. It's a heartfelt attitude of surrender. That I need Christ. I can't save myself. I need Christ. He can save. He can take my sins. If you just invited Christ into your life, I'd like to know that. Would you just slip your hand up? I'll not point you out.